Yeah, well, he goes, I wandered aimlessly for a while, trying to regain my composure. This was difficult as I was baby naked and had been shooed away from the presence of serious magic the way a mother sends a bothersome child away from the cook fire. And he's like, I can't say why I went that far. So he walks way, way off and goes from the point where he's been in the forest the whole time with Florian. Then he goes and walks off to a place that's just a wide open clearing, and there's nothing around. That's how I associate the fact that there's nothing around this area is a partial reason I think for that is probably because the Fae is there. And so they've cleared out a massive swath of space to keep everybody clear of the Fae. Like nobody goes around. Like we don't set up any, no cities, no settings. Nobody's chilling here. This open clearing is completely the Cthaeh's area. Nobody else goes near it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you meant to say the Cthaeh because you kept saying the Fae.
All right, yeah.
I meant the Cthaeh. There's a massive clearing, so yeah, people stay away. There's no Taco Bells, and there's no Jack in the Boxes.
No, she is not setting up a Jack in the Box. That franchise would crash and burn because there's just not enough people going by there. And it sounds like the Scythe or whatever might, lace a couple arrows through people if they happen to cross by when they're around. But yeah, so there's nothing near the Cthaeh. It's like with every step I took, my mood teetered between boredom and anxiety. I was in the Fae after all. I should be seeing marvelous things. Castles of glass, burning fountains, bloodthirsty Tro, barefoot old men eager to give me advice. He sees nothing. And
so
go ahead.
Do we know what a bloodthirsty Tro is?
No.
The barefoot old
like a
men,
troll type of thing.
The barefoot old men sounds like what we were considering would happen is happening. All these geriatric old men are going there searching for Florian.
Yeah. They just went through the wrong door. Now they're just wandering around. Have you seen Florian?
I don't know about they're eager to give advice just because they're old. So they think they know everything. So they're walking around trying to tell people
that's what he's going with. But yeah, he's like, still I continued, enjoying the feel of sunlight on my skin after so long in the dim twilight of Florian's glade. The trail I followed seemed to be leading to a lone tree standing in the grassy field. I decided I would go as far as that tree, then head back. Then he keeps walking and it's not getting any closer. And then he realizes, oh shit, this tree is way bigger than I thought, and it's just way further away.
Seems but again a bit of a warning, right?
Yeah. And the path that leads to the tree, it veers off course and curves away from it by avoiding it more than half a mile. So it seems an intentional thing that there's nothing around this area. That's how serious they take the Fae, is there's a massive wide open area where there's nothing around.
Well, and it repeatedly shows that Kvothe he's ignoring his instincts.
Yeah.
Right? His instincts have told him repeatedly, like, this seems like a bad idea. I'm going much further than I should. But I'll just go to this tree. Tree's a lot further than I thought. I'll just go anyway. The path doesn't even really lead there. I guess I'll just go through this tall fucking grass. Like,
well, and the problem with the Cthaeh is it would know exactly what to do that would get your attention, that would get you to come to it. It would know everything that would work and anything that wouldn't work, and it would be able to pick and choose whatever path is going to get you to come to it. And so if you get within its sight, if it's at all possible for it to get your attention, it will get your attention. That's, it's an extremely dangerous thing. So yeah, and so it does, it gets his attention, and where he's like, I considered turning back when a bright flutter of color under the tree's canopy caught my eye, and I think that's intentional. But also the fact that they talk about, like, it gets to the end of the chapter and there's no butterflies in the area near Florian. And then he's like been ripping the wings off the butterflies and everything. So I'm curious, like, if partial reason that Kvothe went to the Cthaeh is that the Cthaeh or someone driving Kvothe to the Cthaeh was using some kind of magical power, and maybe that's also an explanation why it seems like all the butterflies went to the Cthaeh as well. Maybe there was something pushing things to the Cthaeh, and maybe there's also something magical happening that made the Scythe not see him or look away or go off on another direction. It seems like this might be a section where someone was working behind the scenes to make sure that they met and that he would survive the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention the Scythe, I always forget. I keep forgetting about that. So yeah, that's a big deal. It's interesting also, yeah, when I did read that he comes back and he goes as far as mentioning there's typically butterflies. There weren't any.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
It sounds like they're always where the Cthaeh is because there's this huge mound underneath. But the fact that there's none back where Florian is, yeah, it seems like they must be getting pushed somewhere.
Yeah. But it stands out that the Cthaeh was ripping off, killing all these butterflies, and now there's no more butterflies in that area. So, like, why? Why would that be the case? And so that's the fact that Kvothe seems drawn to it, and he doesn't, he goes in an area where he wouldn't have thought to go, and he blames it on pride and folly, but it could be that, something was guiding him there or pulling him, or there was some kind of magical aspect going on, because why wouldn't the Scythe be there? It seems like that's their job, is to make sure nothing goes by the Cthaeh. It talks to the Cthaeh and comes out alive. So there seems like there has to be some purposeful action that allowed this to happen.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, especially with what comes out of it. I mean, it's what we know about the Cthaeh to begin with. This spins everyone in a direction, whoever it would be, especially someone as powerful as Kvothe and has the objectives that Kvothe has.
And I mean, it sends him on his path. This is the thing that leads him to go to the Atem, and he learns the names of the Chandrian, and he gets the sword, and so there's a ton here. But so the wind shifted, and as the leaves stirred, I smelled a strange, sweet smell. It was like smoke and spice and leather and lemon, which is reminiscent of the Lackless box and the Thrice-Lock box. So it makes you curious if the Thrice-Lock box, because it's such an extravagant piece of equipment, that would be extremely valuable. Like, I mean, he'd be rich as shit just owning that. And so it makes me curious if, he doesn't go back and maybe cuts down that tree.
Well, it's also interesting that, I mean, he mentions that as he's telling the story, he mentions that, but he doesn't say that it's like Roa would.
Yeah.
He just says the 3 traits. Those scents that end up being what Roa wood is. Right? It's kind of interesting
I don't
the way he does.
I don't know that it would necessarily be Roa wood. It could be like a Fae version that's very similar. Like Roa's a little bit different, but this is more of a magical Roa tree or something like that. But there's got to be some kind of significance. Why does it keep mentioning, the Roa wood and all the, these specific items that we're curious about, the board, the mounting board, Thrice-Lock box, the Lackless box, and now the Cthaeh, the tree that the Cthaeh lives in. They all have this same citrus smell to it. Like, I don't, there's got to be some reason they mention that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, definitely.
This is the part I think that is extremely important as far as being able to discover who the king he kills. Because you get, as I stepped closer, I was struck with the beauty of the scene, the deep green of the leaves contrasted with the butterflies flitting from branch to branch, sipping from the pale blossoms of the tree. What I had taken at first to be a bed of flowers beneath the tree turned out to be a carpet of butterflies almost completely covering the ground. The scene was so breathtaking, I stopped several dozen feet away from the tree's canopy, not wanting to startle them into flight. And then he's like, many of the butterflies flitting among the flowers were purple and black or blue and black, like those in Florian's clearing. Others were a solid, vibrant green or gray and yellow, or silver and blue, but my eye was caught by a single large red one, crimson, shot through with a faint tracery of metallic gold. Its wings were bigger than my spread hand, and as I watched it flutter deeper into the foliage in search of fresh flower to light upon, suddenly its wings were no longer moving in concert. They tumbled apart and fluttered separately to the ground like falling autumn leaves, which I think is symbolic because the Sipquicks, which are also known as Calanthus, which is the Elventic name for a Sipquick, is yellow and red. And the first butterfly that catches his eye is red and gold, So he's got the Calanthus is yellow and red, which I think there's a symbolism between the Calanthus line and the Sipquicks and this, the first thing he sees when he sees the Cthaeh is a red and yellow butterfly being torn to pieces and falling to the ground. Like him walking up to the Cthaeh, I think that the symbolism there is that when he walks up and he sees the Cthaeh, that seals the fate for the Calanthus line, that they are broken apart. Because you have...
When you say broken apart, you just mean whoever
ended.
Is the king. Okay, so the king doesn't have a son, and the king is killed. And
Well, I think the Calanthus line is going to be killed off. I don't know. I think all of them are going to die.
Sounds brutal.
Well, because here's the thing. Like, you have when Kvothe goes to, how does he help the mayor? He helps the mayor by killing off the Sipquicks, which are also known as the Calanthus. So he starts off by helping the mayor by killing the Calanthus. And then when he goes and he sees the Cthaeh, the first thing he sees is the red and gold butterfly and the symbolism of it, the Calanthus line being torn apart and ended. It's killed. And that's the first thing that he sees. And then you have, what does the Cthaeh do? He has Kvothe go to the Adim, who introduce him to the sword that he gets. And the sword he calls the, the Seusor.
Seusor.
Yeah, which is the name for that line in poetry is breaking an Elventic line in poetry. So he sends him to the Adim. They give him the sword, which he named after a break in the line of Elventic verse. So you have the Calanthus is the Elventic name for Sipquicks. So
they call it Seusera. He calls it Seusura, right?
Whatever. Yeah, I don't remember the exact.
Fits and all that stuff. Yeah, it's like he follows this instinctive thing back. At that time, he's like, it just fit. I knew it did.
Yeah, he was like what they called it. He was like, what they called it, it's like a glove on a hand. What I called it is like the skin on a hand.
Yeah, it's like the condom.
Yeah.
It's like the
whatever you call those things. The banana boat.
The cod piece. The banana boat. Yeah, it's like the cod piece over the Cosby cod piece.
But just to make sure like everybody gets that connection. So you have the first meeting with the mayor. The first thing he does to save him is he kills off Calanthus. He kills off Sipquicks. And Calanthus is the Elventic name for Calanthus. Sipquicks is the Calanthus is the Elventic name for Sipquicks. So he kills off the Calanthuses. Then his sword is named after a break in the line of Elventic verse. So a break in the line of Elventic. So you have the symbolism between his sword. He kills off Calanthus to help the mayor. His sword is named after a break in the line of Elventics. The Calanthus family is an Elventic name. And so it could be that. And then when he goes and sees the Cthaeh, ripping off the butterfly that has the same colors as the Calanthus family. So, or the same color as the Sipquicks, which are named after the Calanthus. So I think all these things like give a foreshadowing that he's going to be the break in the line of that family. And he's going to use his sword to break the line in that family. And that's how all those pieces are going to tie together. And that's not something, this is one of those ones. I go through this theory in another previous episode, but this is the part where it's fully symbolized and in its clearest way. And I think that this is your best evidence for who the king he kills is. There's nothing else in the book that has these kind of connections that you can make and you can put together that make perfect sense. And they all kind of, it's a great foreshadowing. It's something Rothfuss would do.
And doesn't, just to give some background there, doesn't Stapes state that, or either Stapes or somebody else says, oh, I didn't know them as Sipquicks. I knew them as whatever you just said.
Calanthus. Roderick Calanthus. That is the family, the name of the King Phasia is Phasia Calanthus. Roderick the king is Roderick Calanthus.
Yeah,
and Calanthus.
When they first mentioned Sipquicks,
that's how you find out that Sipquicks used to be called Calanthus. Yeah. That's the Elventic name. And his sword is a break in the Elventic line. So what's the Elventic line of Sipquicks that he was killing? The Calanthus. So everything keeps aligning with him killing off Calanthus.
So those are connections that would need to be made in order to have this theory. But what the things you're pointing out, they stand out. Seusor stands out. The Calanthus Sipquicks connection, that stands out. This isn't like one mention.
Why would Stapes mention that the Sipquicks are also called Calanthus?
What's the point?
Why would Kvothe make such a fucking stink about the sword is means to the break in the line of Elventics? And so, why are everything that they do, they keep making special significant? Why is the one that catches his eye the same color as the Sipquicks, the red and the gold? And so they keep making all these connections, and they're all noteworthy. They all stand out. They're clearly mentioned for a reason. It's not these offhand comments. They stand out in big scenes. So I think it's likely that all three of those tie together. It's one of those ones where I found that theory on Reddit, and it was a comment in one of the posts where it was as soon as I read it, I was like, oh shit, that's fucking brilliant. Whoever fucking figured that out has got a fucking beautiful mind that they were able to make all those connections. Cause that's 100% it. That's what it is he's going to kill a Calanthus with, and it's perfect for the Fae. I mean, the Cthaeh that he's, when Kvothe walks up to him, the first thing he does is tear apart a red and gold butterfly and let it fall to the ground, because he would know what this means. When Kvothe sees him, he would know that he's going to send him out like an arrow to go and kill the Calanthus.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And I mean, also the fact that he's going to use, it seems he's going to use Seusor to kill him. Yeah.
And the Cthaeh sends him off to get that sword. So it all aligns where I mean, it just aligns with something the Cthaeh would do with, he's having fun with the moment by, doing this with the red and gold butterfly, knowing exactly what it means and symbolizes. But I think that's an important thing to take note of. If you're trying to find out who the king he kills is, I don't think you're going to find anything that has that rich of a connection. I don't think there's anything else in the book. If Rothfuss did not intend for all that symbolism to exist, and he did it on accident, and then he doesn't take advantage of it, I think he's stupid. I think it would be a huge mistake, because, man, that is just such a cool, intricate way to write this. If I accidentally did it, I would, and I saw people talking about it, I'd be like, oh, I'm fucking stealing that. That's in the book.
If I accidentally did it and then found it out, that'd freak me the fuck out. I'd be like, who's writing this story?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What the fuck am I involved in?
Yeah.
This is nuts. Yeah. That would totally freak me out. It's my subconscious is way better writer than I am.
But that would be
leaving this shit through.
If he doesn't kill, if the Calanthus line is not ended by Kvothe, I would be like, why didn't you take advantage of the setup you had? You look at this setup. It's so fucking, fucking pretty the way this is all lines. You got to kind of have a fucking beautiful mind to figure it out. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Man, why didn't you take it? I think it's got to be the case that that's who he kills.
Well, and I mean, if it's not, then, and I would assume he did this intentionally, that's a super intricate, subtle way to like tease the careful reader, where it's like, well, this connection could be, and then that's not it. It's like, man, this dude loves to fuck with the reader.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's that's pretty great.
But, you know, as far as the rest, and I love the character of the Cthaeh. Like, he's sitting there ripping butterfly wings off, and it's like the ground below was not a resting place for butterflies. It was strewn with lifeless wing. Thousands of them littered the grass beneath the tree's canopy like a blanket of gemstones. Just like a complete establishing it immediately as a malevolent force. It's like, you know, who the fuck kills butterflies for fun?
There's so many things there. There's so many. First of all, you say you love the character, the Cthaeh. Just as like a literary tool, it's phenomenal. It's so great to have this just out of left field, basically, pivotal force that can have great influence and is hugely ominous in Bast and Florian's mind, people that know of the Cthaeh, right? Not really talked about much else by other characters. You know, mortals don't really talk about it. At least we don't get pieces of dialogue about it. But to just put that in the mix is massive and so foreboding, and you know, it spins out all these possibilities and this influence. It's fucking great. And yes, to have it be such a malicious force of just complete malice.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like the red ones offend my aesthetic. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then just they all do, apparently.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, why the blue one? Because they seem too happy or whatever. They seem too joyous.
I can come up with reasons to kill any of these.
Yeah.
But then I was also thinking, I don't know why this popped up in my mind, but that beautiful fucking layering of all these butterfly, take those, put those on that duster. You got amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat to another level.
Talking about fucking bedazzling a duster.
Yeah. Yeah, now he's out ambrosing Ambrose at those poetry slams.
No, yeah, that's what Ambrose will do when he goes and sees the Cthaeh. Like, the Cthaeh starts talking and he's like, "Shut up, tree! Shut up! Don't talk to me!" And then he just starts collecting all the fucking butterfly wing. Cthaeh's like, "Hey, no, ask me some questions." And Ambrose is just so arrogant. He's like, "I'm above you. You are beneath me, beast. You are a talking tree. I don't care what you have to say. I just want the butterfly wings for my coat."
It is pretty dope, too.
Ambrose would be the one that would be so arrogant that the Cthaeh was beneath him, that the Cthaeh would not be able to manipulate Ambrose because Ambrose wouldn't even give him an opportunity to influence him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the Cthaeh getting frustrated, that'd be funny. Like, this motherfucker?
I knew there was no possible path to influence this kid, but it's still, when it's here and it's in front of me, it's still frustrating.
Yeah, where he's like self-aggrandizing, where I am Cthaeh.
Yeah.
Ambrose, I am Ambrose. Get the fuck out of my face.
I am Ambrose. You see this plume?
Everybody knows this plume. You see this cod piece?
Yeah. Look at this cod piece. You see how big it is? I'm poking you with it from here.
Well, and then speaking of the Cthaeh, also just interesting as a character in itself is it's moving all throughout this tree, and it's like really fluid motion, it seems. So you never really see.
It sounds
you get it
like a snake. It sounds like a snake. And then,
well, and there's a part of being bitten, right? Florian brings it up.
She talks about it being bitten, and then, you know, like there's a part where it kind of like hisses at him, but where he's like,
that's right.
He's like, "My apologies, sir," I said earnestly, then remembering the tree's flowers, I admitted, "Ma'am, but I have never spoken with a tree before, and find myself at something of a loss. I dare say you are. I am no tree, no more than a man is a chair. I am the Cthaeh. You are fortunate to find me. Many would envy your chance." That's a famous line where, for some reason, a significant portion of the people who read this book think the Cthaeh is a talking tree, even though he explicitly says, "I am no tree." no more than a man is a chair. So he's obviously just in a tree.
Yeah, I'm in a tree. That's interesting you mentioned. I thought about that too with Felorian mentioning looking for a bite mark. And then also that I mean, that's what it sounds like, right? I thought it was interesting that the Cthaeh did not also correct sir or ma'am, doesn't correct Kvothe either,
No.
right? Just ignores that completely.
Just I mean, he's above it all. He's just like, I am Cthaeh. I am. Yeah. I see. I know. But yeah, because he calls him Oracle, and I think it's when he's like, how quaint. Do not try to pin me with small names, which is interesting because of how important names are to the story. And Kvothe, Elodin talks about small names and stuff like that. And so he brings up that's, don't try to pin me with a small name. I am Cthaeh. I am. I see. I know. And so at times I speak. And I think he sounds very much like the guy that the Jax meets in the cave, the hermit that knows. He just knows everything. He knows he keeps saying, to the point where he looks at the rope and he knew exactly how Jax tried to get it to open up. It's like, you bet it. He's like, yeah, I tried everything. It's not everything, but this is the part I think that ties the Cthaeh to the guy in the cave. I think when you read about the Cthaeh, they have a lot of parts that sound very similar. Obviously, in the story, the guy in the cave doesn't sound sinister, but when like Kvothe is running away or when Jax is leaving, they both have this. No, wait, stay with me, don't go. And, they and the all knowing and all those kind of things. There's a lot of aspects that tie those two together. And the fact that he sends Kvothe off and to go to the Adim, get the sword that's named after the break in the Elventic line. And it's, there's a symbolism between killing the Calanthus line. And then he sends Jax off to go, gives him the information he would need to go create the Fae and capture the moon. It just seems like, it makes that character seem like the Cthaeh, considering that Jax talking to the Cthaeh was a significant thing that preceded him stealing the moon, according to Bast.
I like the idea that one story it's malicious, another it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And typically it's malicious. Very similar with like Haliax, right? We see that whole force as being quite evil. And then you get Lanre, Haliax, whatever. And then you get Braden or, Denna's song, and it completely turns it. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of this idea of perspective, but also how the story is told, because these are stories. This is coming directly from the Cthaeh, so it's obviously different in this sense, but it's interesting to sort of piece those out with Hespe's story, Cthaeh, how the similarities, but then also one seems very malevolent, the other not so much, but they were both doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Insisting. The old man in the cave was insisting, like, I can help you. You should be asking, you could learn from me. You should stay with me. I could do that. And it just kept going and driving at it. And Iax was pulling an Ambrose. He wouldn't hear none of that shit.
I don't have time for you. Cease your sweet words, sir.
Cease your sweet words.
But yeah, like, you're Felurian's new manling, aren't you? I hesitated, but the dry voice continued as if I'd answered. I thought as much. I can smell the iron on you. Just a hint. Still, one has to wonder how she stands it. And surely a curious boy is bound to have a question or two. Come, ask. Your silence offends me. What can you tell me about the Emir? Kiss. What is this? Why so guarded? Why the games? Ask me of the Chandrian and have done. I stood stunned and silent. But that kiss, even the way he says it in the audible, it sounds like a snake. Like, who fucking talks like that? Who puts a little sis at the end of their fucking words?
Yeah. When I heard that, I was kind of like, I mean, is that a Fey word? And then it was, yeah. Well, especially once Felurian mentions she looked for a bite mark.
Yeah.
So when you really
and it was talking about, like, I saw, like, sinuous movement. And makes me think it's a snake. Like I thought I saw a sinuous motion among the branches, but it was hidden by the endless winding brush swaying of the tree. Like if it's a person, you would see that. You would see the person.
Yeah,
Like if it's a snake, it would be hard to see in a tree.
Yeah, well, and like the mentioning that, yeah, that he can't see it, he doesn't mention it, right? It's just like this voice is there, right? A person can't camouflage themselves like that. One would think not in a tree, then moving around. You would see the motion, right? People aren't built that way. But yeah, with the snake, yeah, essentially that's I mean,
but yeah,
it's logical.
Then he goes into, surprise. Why should you be? Goodness, boy, you're like a clear pool. I can see 10 feet through you, and you're barely 3 feet deep. There was another blur of motion of two pairs of wings spinning to the ground, one purple, or one blue, one purple. The Cthaeh's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of a flurrying to him, but like flurrying, like tries to play it off as she's just playing around. She's just joking, just ribbing him. Like he's just straight insulting him.
Yeah.
But, Kvothe is a glutton for punishment. He just sticks around after this guy just insults the shit out of him. But yeah, and he's like, I thought I saw a sinuous motion among the branches, but it was hidden by the endless winding brush swaying of the tree. Why the purple one? I asked, simply to have something to say. Pure spite, Cthaeh said. I envied his innocence, its lack of care. Besides, too much sweetness cloys me, as is willful ignorance. Such a fucking great line. It's like he made the Cthaeh such a weird fucking malevolent force in the world.
Yeah, I mean, literally seems to be able to find any reason to hate anything. And you're talking about different colored shades of colored butterflies.
He's got like a kind of a flamboyant air about him too, like the way he's got a flourishing style with his malevolence.
Yeah, that's quite entertaining.
Yeah, and then you wish to ask me of the Chandrian, do you not? I could do nothing but nod. Not much to say, really, the Cthaeh remarked flippantly. You would do better to call them the Seven, though. Chandrian has so much folklore hanging off it. After all these years, the names used to be interchangeable, but nowadays, if you say Chandrian, people think of ogres, Renleys, and Skaven. Such silliness. And then he's, asked why. I thought I detected a playful note in his voice. Because I need to know, I said, trying to force some strength back into my voice. Need? Why the sudden need? The masters at the university might know. And he tells them, they know some things, and they could give you answers, but they won't, and you're not going to ask them anyways. Too mindful of your reputation. But, he's like, please, I need to know they killed my parents. And he's like, all right, are you going to try to kill them? And I like that aspect. There are people who point to this part where he's like, the voice sounded fascinated, almost taken aback. Track and kill them all yourself? My word, how will you manage it? But I don't think he's being, I think he knows. I do think he knew Kvothe was going to say that. I think he's just playing the role that he needs to play.
Baiting him.
Yeah.
But he's also baiting him. I mean, that's, you've talked about that a number of times. And I have a bit of that in me myself when someone's like, yeah, I don't think you could do it. Like, fuck you.
And it's like, Haliax has been around 5,000 years. 5,000 years and not 1 second sleep. That would be brutal.
He's pretty groggy.
Yeah. I get tired after like 24 hours. I'm starting to hit my upper limit. 48 hours and I'm really struggling.
Yeah, I have a shorter leash than that on my needs of sleep. I can go for a little bit, but eventually that shit catches up. I just literally get sick.
But yeah, and then clever to go looking for the Emir, I suppose. Even one prodigies can recognize the need for help. The Order might give it to you. Trouble is, they're as hard to find as the Seven themselves. Oh dear, whatever is a brave young boy to do. It's such a flippant, fucking playful attitude. So it's a cool, interesting mix on this. He's got like the Cinder and the Cthaeh, and they both got these kind of just like flippant, playful, arrogant, mocking aspects to them, where it's like, what are these the evil forces? They're so freaking flamboyant.
Yeah, and they like toying with their prey. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah,
but they're good at it. Is the other thing.
And and they don't respect them. They look down at them like they're they are just toys. Yeah, they are playthings. And he's like, it would be frustrating, I suppose. The few people who believe in the Chandrian are too afraid to talk, and everyone else will just laugh at you for asking. It's like, that's the price you play for civilization. This is where he tells him you'll have to leave your precious four corners behind before you find someone who would take you seriously. You wouldn't have a hope until you made it to Stormwall. So he sends him to the Adem right there. Like, he plants in the seed, you need to go to the Adem. So when it comes up with Tempe, that's one of the things that pops in his head is what the Cthaeh said. And the Cthaeh would know that it would pop in his head. So I think he purposefully is sending him to the Adem. And I think that it's to get that sword. And I think this is going to lead him down a path that's going to lead to, trouble. I think going to the Adem and learning the skills that he learns, getting that sword, I think eventually comes back to bite him in the ass. And also learning what Shayan has to say about the Chantry and learning their names. And then he's like, not many folk will take your search for the Emir seriously, you realize. The Cthaeh continued calmly. The mayor, however, is quite an extraordinary man. He's already come close to them, though he doesn't realize it. Stick by the mayor, and he will lead you to their door. The Cthaeh gave a thin, dry chuckle. Blood, bracken, and a bone. I wish you creatures had the wit to appreciate me. Whatever else you might forget, remember what I just said. Eventually you'll get the joke, I guarantee. You'll laugh when the time comes. Yeah, what's a fucking joke, buddy?
Yeah.
Like we always say, the jokes don't land unless you explain them. And this is a perfect example of it. I don't get the joke at all because he hasn't explained it.
Well, there's a lot of different ways that you could spin this, right? Because you just basically say, okay, well, who is it the mayor has been close to, right? That we know of.
Yeah.
And who could that possibly be? I mean, the fact that it's a joke, it's almost like, oh, it could be Malevolent, or maybe it's Kvothe, maybe it's Stapes. It's probably not Stapes or what's his face? The guy I always draw a blank on.
Caudicus.
Gilgamesh. Yeah, Caudicus.
There's the only names would be, Caudicus, Stapes, Malevolent, Braden, and the scary guard guy. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Oh, yeah.
Drogan.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't know why I always struggle with that guy's name, but for whatever reason, it doesn't stick in my head. But that guy, everybody knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's on 2 pages. So
yeah.
Or something like that, like 2 chapters, so no wonder.
But I think, it's got to be one of them. But, why would there be something funny, a funny aspect to it? Could be, the fact that Caudicus was trying to prevent a lackless line from being born. So the joke is that he took out, while Caudicus was trying to take out a lackless line and prevent one from happening, a lackless male heir ended up thwarting his efforts. If you're trying to prevent a male lackless heir and a male lackless heir prevents your efforts, it would be, ironic. It's not the best joke. So if that's his joke, it'd be don't become a stand-up. Don't quit your Oracle job.
Well, and then the fact that it's a joke, it would almost make me feel like even more so. It would either be Malevolent because he helps the mayor get Malevolent, or Kvothe himself. Which I'm not saying.
I think what it could end up being that the joke is going to be that he figures out the way he gets to the mayor or gets to the Emir is through his discovery that Malevolent is his aunt. And there's, that's what's funny is that she hates the Rue and, the joke is that he's her nephew. But again, it's not the funniest joke. Rothfuss really gave himself, that's probably why there's been a long time between the third book, because I've thought about this and I can't think of a funny joke on how to spin this. And I've never heard anybody come up with a joke where I'm like, yeah, that would be hilarious. So he really he set himself up with a tough one, and he's probably been consulting with comedians and trying to figure out some way to have a little wry, ironic twist in there that would be hilarious. Because the Cthaeh guarantees we're going to laugh. So it better be fucking funny.
Well, what if it's just as simple as stick by the mare and he will lead you to their door, and it just happens to be, the door's stone, or I don't know. It's not funny.
It's like the mayor tells the is your door ajar? No, it's made of wood or something like that. Some stupid fucking pun based off of
It's a being a
yeah.
It would be kind of funny. Ridiculous, but yeah, would actually be kind of funny.
Yeah.
Ctheah's just like, see, I love stupid humor.
Yeah.
I love puns.
I'm a huge fan of puns, even though I don't tell you a pun the entire time we talk. But yeah, and then so he goes and pushes him further, but he sets him to the ADEM, and then he establishes that the mayor is going to be an important figure in book 3, obviously. Don't understand the joke, and then he's like, what can you tell me about the Chandrian? I asked, since you asked so sweetly. Cinder is the one you want. Remember him? White hair, dark eyes, did things to your mother, terrible. She held up well, though. Lorien was always a trooper, if you'll pardon the expression. Much better than your father, with all his begging and blood. So he did use a pun. I just said like he didn't use a pun, and there's a pun right there. So he is a big fan of puns. So it is going to be some stupid the doors ajar joke. But it's hard to interpret that as anything other than Cinder being evil. Like, because the only way you could spin that is like when he says, Cinder's the one you want. Remember him? White hair, dark eyes. And then he goes, did things to your mother, terrible. Like, it could be that he's saying, he's just saying words. Like, the only way you could spin that is like Cinder didn't do terrible things to his mother and his father, is if you're just saying that the Cthaeh is lying through leaving things out, leaving out context.
Lies of omission.
Yeah, and
that's ridiculous.
That's such a weak loophole. Like, if Rothfuss goes that route where it's that blatant, like where it's just, man, that is so over the top misleading to paint Cinder as pure evil, that is just lying. Like, I mean, to like, oh no, he didn't specifically say that like Cinder raped her or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, but he heavily implied it.
Yeah, really heavily. And the idea and what Florian says, that the Cthaeh does not lie.
But yeah, like
the lie of omission here. It's
that's
to influence.
That's where people try to save it for the Chandrian, is they say like all these things. He doesn't specifically say the Chandrian did X. And so he could be manipulating Kvothe by misleading him with what the words that he says. I just think it would be a weak way for Rothfuss to go if that's the case, because that strips what the interesting aspect of the Cthaeh is, that it knows all possible futures, and it uses that ability to send people down the worst possible path, but it doesn't lie. It doesn't need to lie to do it. It can do it just with telling them the truth, and the truth is enough to fuck shit up. So if you just make it lie, then it's just like it's a god without, limitation, with almost no limitations.
Well, it's also, one thing that people who ascribe to that do have going for them is we know that the Cthaeh basically has no qualms. He'll do whatever, right? To create that future, to create that scenario, and he's malevolent. But it is much more interesting if it's malevolent, creating the future, influencing things, but then also doing it by having to adhere to the truth. That's much more interesting. That's a much more interesting villain.
Yeah. It just it adds an element, a limiting element that makes it more interesting than it's for the same reason why like an overpowered superhero becomes less interesting. It's the same thing with the Cthaeh. When you add it in this little limitation to complete foreknowledge of the what's going to happen, like that's a interesting limiting factor to it, that it would tell you the truth, and then you got to kind of and maybe it massages things a little bit, but it's not like maybe like when he talks about her patron beats her, maybe he's not saying it's necessarily like completely malicious that he's doing it because he's evil. Maybe there is a purpose behind it, like he's training her or something along those lines. But that would seem more of massaging the truth, then like he makes Kvothe think he's talking about the Chandrian, but he's actually talking about that mirror or something like that.
Yeah, it's completely misleading. I mean, and it's through like literal abject action of word.
But yeah,
that's a lot less subtle. That's a
yeah,
lot less artistically done.
Yeah, for sure. And then he's like, he thinks of his mother, her hair wet with blood, arms unnaturally twisted, broken at the wrist and elbow. My father's belly cut open and left a trail of blood for 20 feet. He crawled to be closer to her. I tried to speak. My mouth was dry. Why? I managed to croak. Just, man, what a brutal thing to see as a 12-year-old kid. Like, it gives you that memory of it. And then, why the Cthaeh echoed. What a good question. I know so many whys. Why did they do such nasty things to your poor family? Why? Because they wanted to. Because they could. Because they had a reason. Why did they leave you alive? Why? Because they were sloppy. Because you were lucky. And because something scared them away. What scared them away? I thought numbly. The fact that describes them. Why'd they leave you alive? Why? Because they were sloppy and because you were lucky and something scared them away. That's a perfect description of what happened with the Chandrian. It's hard to envision a scenario where he's not they is not the Chandrian.
No, it's exactly. It's the same scenario of what we read.
Yeah,
just seeing it from a different perspective, from a larger viewpoint.
But I do think it's interesting where he's like, are you wondering why I tell you these things? What good comes of it? Maybe this Cinder did me a bad turn once. Maybe it amuses me to set a young pup like you snapping at his heels. Which is interesting because if what he's doing if it seems to be clear that he's sending Kvothe, he wants Kvothe to go after Cinder. And I mean, this is ultimately he's sending Kvothe after Cinder seems to be his ultimate goal, and he's got a grudge against him.
Yeah, he definitely mentions that, which it's interesting for that inclusion because Kvothe's already motivated to kill Cinder. He doesn't need this extra motivation. If anything, it would bring me pause, where it's like, well, the fuck's this guy got a dog in the hunt here, or whatever the phrase is there. Why is he bringing this up? But I do also like the the further mention of maybe the soft creaking of your tendons as you clench your fist is like a sweet symphony to me. Oh, yes, it is, and you can be sure.
Yeah, he's a malevolent fucking creature. I mean, he just seems to be pure evil. But yeah, and then he lets him know that Cinder was the bandit, and he's that's right. I suppose you don't need me to tell you what he looks like. You've seen him just a day or three ago. And then realization thundered into me. The leader of the bandits, graceful man in chainmail, Cinder. He was the one who'd spoken to me when I was a young child. The man with the terrible smile and the sword like winter ice. Pity you got away. Still, you must admit you've had quite a piece of luck. I'd say it was a twice-in-a-lifetime opportunity meeting up with him again. So the way twice-in-a-lifetime opportunity meeting up with him again, it sounds like you meet him, and then to meet him again is a twice-in-a-lifetime thing. So seems like there's going to be another meeting with Cinder. And it seems like that's the purpose of what the Cthaeh ultimately wants, is to send him after the Chandrian and specifically Cinder. So it seems highly likely that he's going to meet Cinder again in book 3.
I would say so, but would you? From what you're mentioning there, he has met him twice.
Yeah, but I'm saying he meets him, and then he's saying it's a twice in a life opportunity to meet him again. So twice to meet him again. To meet him after the initial time is a twice in a lifetime experience, is what I read that as being. Otherwise, he's not meeting him again. So I think that's the way you would read that, where he could meet him a third time. But yeah, and then he tells him that Denna's patron, he's like, what would Denna think about you and, Florian banging like rabbits? And he's like, he beats her, her patron. Not all the time, but often. Sometimes in a temper, but mostly it's a game to him. How far can he go before she cries? How far can he push before she tries to leave and he can lure her back again? It's nothing grotesque, mind you. No burns, nothing that will leave a scar. Not yet. 2 days ago, he used his walking stick. That was new. Well, it's the size of your thumb under her clothes. Bruises down to the bone. She's trembling on the floor with blood in her mouth. And you know what she thinks before the black? You. She thinks of you. You thought of her too, I'm guessing, in between the swimming and the strawberries and the rest. But the fact that it's a game, he mentions it's a game, the walking stick, all that stuff sounds like Brayden more than Cinder. I mean, Cinder, you can the beating aspect of it sounds like something Cinder would do for sure. He would beat her, but the game of it, I don't know. I mean, he likes to toy with Kvothe, so I get, you could paint it as either, but like, I think you could do some interesting things with it as being like a part of a beautiful game. Like there's a method to the madness to it, and it's not necessarily malevolent. Well, if it's Brayden, it's not necessarily malevolent what he's doing. He's got a reason behind it.
Yeah, I mean, with Cinder, well, I just don't think it is Cinder. It's funny when I read it through, I guess I could see other people saying, well, see, he's talking about Cinder, and then he goes into the patron. Well, you could also read that as that completely separates them, right?
Yeah.
But if you're wanting to think it's one, then goes right into it. Sounds malicious, which is definitely Cinder's aim. Would he be baiting Kvothe, or is he just beating the shit out of Denna to beat the shit out of Denna? Is that what's the end game? Why is he with her to begin with? What does he need her for?
Yeah, and it's easy to see where you could interpret it either way for either character. I mean, it's easy. It's just like we've talked about a number of times. I got my reasons for why I think it would be more interesting for it to be Brayden. But then he pushes on him where he's like, it's the same shame you left without a word, She was just beginning to trust you before that, before you got angry, before you ran off, just like every other man in her life, just like every other man, lusting after her, full of sweet words, then just walking away, leaving her alone. Good thing she's used to it by now, isn't it? Otherwise, you might have hurt her. Otherwise, you might have just broken that poor girl's heart. And then Kvothe hearing that. It's a brutal message for Kvothe. Like, what a fucking dick. Way to send him. I mean, knowing full well this is going to send Kvothe off running, but he's, that was his purpose. He wanted that to happen. So, yeah, Kvothe takes off. It's too much. And then you hear him, come back. I have more to say. I have so much more to tell you. Won't you stay? Which sounds like what the Cthaeh, or what the hermit in the cave was saying to Ajax when he was heading out.
Yeah.
But yeah. Then he goes back to Florian, and it's just, her going, what has come of you? I might ask you the same. But then she sees he's broken up. And she's like, when I looked up, I saw real concern in her eyes. I went walking dayward. I found something in a tree. It called itself the Cthaeh. The Cthaeh, did you speak? Did you ask of it? And then she tackles him down. She's like looking for bite marks. And then she's like, are you well? And she's in a full-blown panic. So it's clear, like, the Cthaeh is no fucking joke that it's got Florian panicked. And then she's like, all is well, the hurt will go. It has not bit you, and your eyes are clear, so all is well. I pulled away from her to look her in the face. My eyes? So a couple things. It didn't bite her. It didn't bite you, and then it. She doesn't say he or she. She says it. Mm-hmm. And she would know what the Cthaeh is. So the fact that she refers to it as an it makes it sound like more like a snake than a human. I don't think she would refer to Bast as it. I think she would say he.
Yeah, but, I would think so. But we're seeing Bast in our world. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, when she refers to like Ajax, and she's like, the things they did, and he and she uses he and she for other people. Yeah. So, and she's like, it lies to men, or he asks her, it lies to men and drives them mad? She shook her head slowly. The Cthaeh does not lie. It has the gift of seeing, but it only tells things to hurt men. Only a Dennerling would speak to the Cthaeh. She touched the side of my neck to soften her words. I nodded, knowing it to be the truth, and I began to cry. Which is, the important revelation. That's, why would you write that in there if you were going to pull the fucking rug back on, the Cthaeh lying? Like, you make a point of her saying that the Cthaeh doesn't lie. I believe Bast reiterates the fact that it does not lie. Yeah. So why make a point of that if you're going to pull the rug back and it lies through omission? That's just stupid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think even if that happened, I think you'd rewrite it.
Yeah.
Right? Like to make it work in a more Rothfuss sort of manner, right?
Yeah.
In a way that's much cleaner and much more thought provoking and
It's like
interesting.
writing limitations into sympathy and then just being like, well, that limitation's not as fun. That limitation limits me, so I'm going to eliminate it. It's like,
Yeah.
what? But yeah, I think that will wrap up that one. I mean, those are two monumental chapters as far as theory building, because what the Cthaeh says and what Florian says play big roles in big theories. And that's what, when people talk about the Fae is boring, and it's like part of the reason you might feel that way is I think you don't appreciate how much is there on the first read through, like, because these are massively pivotal scenes for theorizing.
Yeah, I mean, well, and they build out the mythology of the world that connects so many things together that are larger parts of what's happening in the world. And we got some theme, as Rothfuss likes to say. He doesn't know what a theme is, but that pride and folly that gets reiterated in here. I mean, it's vital. I mean, it's huge to the overall story, and it just layers in, I guess, a little bit further that we know, he's at fault and everything, but literally
He
where it
probably,
stems from.
I think he just probably pronounces it themey, and so when he hears people talking about themes, he's like, I don't know what a theme is. No, a themey. I
Did you mean
definitely
themey?
know a themey. I have lots of themies in my books.
You mean
It's kind of, I mean, the guy has a problem with pronunciation. Like, Eladin? Really? Like, come on, dude. Learn how to pronounce the names in your book.
I did want to mention also, I did find interesting, Kvothe does have the instincts that lead him in directions that can either be right or wrong, and the sense that what I think is definitely important, obviously is important to the story, is when he was asked, where would you go? You go anywhere in the world, where would you go? He mentions the Stormwall Mountains.
Yeah, he mentions going over him to the tall.
Yeah, but I mean, that's much before this.
Yeah.
That's much before the Cthaeh told him you need to go there. His instincts were already leading him in that direction, which is, interesting, because we end up finding out that the told him that's where he should be going. So he was right all along.
Yeah. So after this, we get the next week we'll get Bast flipping out about the meeting with the Kingkiller, and then he leaves the Fae, and we'll get him going to the bar and blowing some nips off of Losi and company.
Oh shit! So he's coming out, huh?
Yeah, that's how quick the Fae section is. It's only like basically 10 chapters, and not all and most of the chapters. Wow. A few of them are really short chapters. So there's the Fae section is super short. It's packed with some big elements with what Florian's story about the moon and the Cthaeh. Those are massive elements, and then he gets his Fae cloak, and he has his fight with her, and there's not really, I don't when people are like, it's boring, I'm like, man, it's so short. Like, how could you get bored in this?
Yeah, that I don't get. I think there's something else that's stemming behind it.
I think it's well, sometimes like when you change scenery and stuff, like you run into that where it becomes hard to sink into because it's so different and new. So I think maybe that can play into it.
Well, in this
because
case,
it keeps changing scenery so quickly.
In this case, it's entirely different.
Yeah.
Entirely different. But, and yeah, I guess, there's so many elements of the universe that people like so much that they always keep going back to that. But this, I think it's tremendous. If for me also, the time in the Fae, it gets better with rereads. Like, it genuinely gets better with rereads, because there's things like I missed, things I didn't appreciate as much, that are fucking just tremendously written.
Well, just like the red and yellow butterfly and what that could symbolize, and him sending him to the Adim to get the sword. that is going to be the break in the Elventic line. Like, that's so subtly done that not only is you're not going to probably get that, you're not going to get it at all in the first read, but even getting it on the second or third read is difficult. You almost need like multiple people pointing out little different things, and then all of a sudden you start tying everything together.
Well, that's even speaking of story structure. What I'm more even talking about is just literally the symbolism, the imagery, and just the wordplay. The like poetic nature of it's tremendous. I mean, I didn't hardly mention that many pieces, but just so much of it. The visual images are fantastic when he's like running through, and how like Florian's body's sort of like dappled with moonlight. Like the way he describes it is really great, and doing it all while maintaining the mysterious element throughout. It's really cool, man. Like there's not a lot of authors that are able to do that.
No,
and if they attempt to, it doesn't come across. This not only comes across, there's real like sort of meat in it, which is saying a lot because it is still very ethereal, but there's still a lot of experience inside of it. It's hard to digest what that even is, but that's kind of the point. That's a big part of what the point is, and I love the idea of like that, just sort of the mind fuck of she's older than the Fae. So where was she before the Fae? Like who made her? And like and then just the idea.
She is Sim creation too. That's how it ends. We're a simulation reading a book that is a simulation.
What it ends up being is Simon is sitting at a computer at a university. Instead of going to class, he's just playing this.
Simon, this is a 3D virtual reality sim world that Sim created.
It's Sim. It's literally he named it after himself. And he's just playing the game. I love that idea. He invented it, and Kvothe is a character. They're all just characters.
Yep, there you go. So solve that mystery. But
that's probably my least favorite. That's my least favorite version of how the story ends up.
They can't all be winners. Some of them come out wonky. But and so chapter starts with Kvothe motioning for Chronicler to stop, and he looks over at Bast. He's like, "Are you all right, Bast?" He gave a student a look of concern. "You look like you've swallowed a lump of iron." "Reshi, you've never told me you spoke to the Cthaeh. There's a lot of things I've never told you, Bast. That's why you find the sordid details of my life so enthralling." And then Bast, at this point, like he starts to relax, like, "Oh, okay, you're just messing with me. You didn't really go talk to him then." And he's like, "It's just something you added to make things a little more colorful." And I like this part where he's like, "Please, Bast, my story has quite enough color without me adding to it." And when Bast kind of flips out on him, it's like immediately ramps up to, "Don't lie to me!
Yeah.
Don't you lie to me about this! Don't you dare!" And I like the fact that where Kvothe is sitting there going like, "Man, I'm not lying. This is my chance to tell the honest story of my life." And, obviously Bast doesn't take it well, but I like that aspect where he does seem to make it pretty clear that, and I believe he's earnest here. I don't think he's just bullshit, and I don't think Rothfuss wrote this in as to be like misdirection. I think it's Kvothe being earnest that this is my attempt to tell the true story of my life, what really happened, because that's kind of the plot of the book too.
Yeah.
Him telling the true story behind this, his legendary figure telling the true story of his life behind all the, bullshit flourishes that get added on.
Well, he's a legendary figure, and it's a sad story. So it comes across. So Chronicler sells him on the idea, and past that point, it seems as if what he's trying to do is set the record straight to some degree, right? And at least get it out there of like what actually happened, what the truth is within the story. Now, obviously, he bends the truth, and he even does it within this group in real time. But Yeah, it does seem like what he is at least saying to Bast. Well, and also just Bast flipping out like this, just the subject of the chapter itself elevates the Cthaeh even more.
Yeah.
Right? That event. Well, and then we get it explained too, like literally what it means, what power he holds, which fuck is really quite chilling.
It's important because there's obviously a lot of people that look at him as being an unreliable narrator, and unreliable narrator is another one of those words where people have their own special meanings for what that means. Sometimes when people say that, like they just mean that, his memory is not going to be 100% perfect, or that, when he's talking to people, he's not in Denna's head. So he misinterprets what is actually why she's doing what she's doing, or things like that, where because he's not in the other person's head, he's not analyzing why they're doing what they're doing, their motivations and their agendas and all that kind of stuff. He's missing those kind of things. And some people think of those things as being an unreliable narrator. And it's like, well, no, that's just being a narrator, and
that's
not
just
being
realistic
inside their head. Yeah.
Not that's just
inside their he's not, I think of unreliable narrator as intentionally misleading the audience. And I don't think he is intentionally misleading the audience. But
that's done. That's also done. Well, yeah, I agree. That's also done, at least as far as I see it, in a different kind of a format where it's almost like it would be a compilation of letters that were written. You know what I mean? Or like it is a narrator telling a story, and yes, he could be trying to weave that story. And Rothfuss could, in some way, utilize that to really surprise the audience in an interesting way. But on things like this, it cheapens the story. It cheapens what he's doing, unless you can spin it to where it would make it more interesting, where Kvothe's not just, a bullshit artist, right? If this all just his imagination,
it's a very fine line to walk if you're going to write 2 books and people are going to spend so much time analyzing it. If you're going to make, turn it when you go to book 3 and you're just going to be like, tricked you and just pull the rug back. And it was like, that was a lie. I tricked you. I got you to believe that. It's like, it cheapens how intricate the plot is and how intricate a lot of the things tie together. Like how, how the Malevolent Lackless is one of the ones that, is pretty much confirmed. We are 99% sure that Malevolent is Natalia, or not Malevolent, Natalia Lackless is Lorien, is Kvothe's mom. And so that's pretty much 99%. Everybody pretty much agrees that is correct. There's a few oddballs that have some crazy theories, like Felurian's actually his mom or things like that. And yeah, and
that's weird.
Yeah, that's the appropriate look to that.
I made the stink face.
That idea, but but the way it's introduced into the plot, where like you can go back and you can see her reaction to the Lackless poem. Then you can see Kvothe when he's reciting the song that his dad sang about not tally a lot less. You can see the connection with Malevolent when he meets her and some of the things she says, and then in the letter that he gets from people that are spreading gossip about the Lacklesses and other families. So there's all these little points, and you can connect them, but you got to go from book 1 and book 2, and you got to pull these things together and connect the dots. But if you can pull anything back and just be like, well, I was lying, and I wanted to trick you into believing that Natalia Lackless is actually Kvothe's mom, is actually, I tricked you into believing that, my mom is Natalia Lackless, but that's not actually the case. Those were those clues and stuff. I just made those up. Like, if you can do that, if you can pull things back with lies, that doesn't make the story better. It cheapens the story. And it pulls back on some of the cool aspects of the story and how intricate things connect.
And then it also suggests, well, what else? What else you lying about? Is this all bullshit? Because that's kind of the funniest theory that we come to is like this is all just his imagination and it's just been a fever dream and none of it really happened. Which yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that was great. That's where the end you're like, yeah. I mean, something like that, you're like, it ruins the whole fucking thing. Where
it gets to the end, and it's not only is it a dream, but it's like, you know, some random person's dream, or like even worse, like it's like a dream from like Abrams, the guy that created Lost. It's just like him waking up like from a dream, J.J. Abrams or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, that reminds me of like movies that I liked as I'm watching it, and the end is so bad that you're just like, I'm fucking, you never remember it again, never think about it, because like the ending just like completely ruined the fucking the story itself or the experience.
Yeah, I mean you can't have like a puzzle and you got all these pieces and then you're just gonna wipe all those pieces out later on with just like it was a trick, it was a lie, I made that up to fool you. Because I mean you can't do that in some you can do that in some books, but like it's the fact that there's so many intricate clues that connect to other clues that you could start pulling theories together. That's what he's doing, is creating a puzzle. Like if you don't want to create a puzzle like that and then pull it back with it was all lies, because that just takes away from what makes the first two books so cool. Well, one of the aspects of what makes them cool.
It negates the point of the effort. Why take all the trouble? Why go through all that craftsmanship to then just chop it into pieces?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't, why, like some of the clues are so subtle and so difficult to pick up. You know, like even the Natalia Lackless, that is one probably at least half the people who read it the first time don't get it. Like we had somebody sending us messages like after listening to episode 4 and like, man, I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe I never put the pieces together.
I didn't get it after
a lot of people missed that. And then when you're talking about some of the other ones, like they're super underneath the surface. And so if you're going to pull those things back with saying it was a lie, like most people aren't even going to, you don't even get the like, oh shit, you know, now that I guess that theory was bullshit and that was a lie and I got tricked, because they wouldn't even picked up on it in the first place.
That's like one of those games where you're like, all right, then I just don't even want to play. If that's how we're going to play that's how these rules are going to get bent, then it's like, well, forget it then. This isn't interesting anymore.
Yeah, the cool thing, and I think what makes what makes the story difficult is how you connect all the dots and you connect all the pieces and you make it connect in a satisfying way, not how you can trick the audience. Like that's not, you know, that's not interesting. If he's doing like if he's doing something that's just a blatant lie where he's just manipulating the audience, I don't think that's not really interesting storytelling from what he did in the first two books. I think you got to do a different kind of story if you're going to do those kind of things. If you're going to trick people in there, where there's got to be clues that you were tricking people. And
and there's got to be a motive, and it would need to be like in this context, it would need to be like he's tricking Chronicler for a particular reason, and there would be utility in it that we would see play out in book 3.
Yeah,
but not like an overall.
I'll give you an example.
Story,
there's like in Song of Ice and Fires. I won't go into spoilers for people who haven't read it, but there's a particular thing.
I'll go into the end. I'll tell you about the end of it.
Yeah, there's a particular scene that floors people when they read the books, and you know the first time you go through it, you know, catches you off guard. You didn't see it coming at all. But then when you go back through, you see that he laid the tracks for that. That was destined to happen. He laid all the tracks there. They were there to see if you knew what you were looking for. People have been through his books, you know, Rothfuss's books with a fine-tooth comb. There's no hints that he's going to be just like, I was lying. This, you know, half the stories I tell about my life are just bullshit. and I just said things to make myself look good, and it would be like, what? Why?
Well,
Why would you do that?
Well, not only just that. There's also, he talks about the utility of making the story a little bit different to make it more believable. Like when he talks about, coming up here, when he talks about how he explains his time with Florian, it's even a better story to tell it exactly the way it happened, but it won't be believable. So you mix in a couple things they would expect, and you like kind of build on things they already think about you, and then that's just storytelling basically 101 in these books. I mean, he explains it multiple times. His father explained it. He explains it. I mean, it gets explained over and over again that there's a need to do that. By saying that, we understand this is a character that knows that. You know what I'm saying? And he does it not to cheapen his story. He does it to make the story palatable. Right? So then to have it, that would again mean he would be lying he would be putting in lies for a purposeful way, which would come back to what I was mentioning before. It would need to be something that is intentioned simply to fool Chronicler, and then one would hope it gets revised, like he revises it or something, who knows. But it would just be something that would be, it's kind of what we've talked about before or a number of times with like it's not an earned twist. Like the groundwork's not laid for it. It would come completely out of left field where it doesn't, when you're hitting us over the head, like here, where he's like, dude, I'm telling you my true story of my life. The whole purpose of this is for me to tell you the truth behind all the lies and the made up bullshit and the myth. And then to be like, I was lying again. Like, I just lie all the time. I lie even when I'm saying, telling you, I'm telling the truth now. He's like, I'm lying then too. He's
like, what is like
Peter Baelish over here.
Kvothe like a fucking douchey character.
You can't make that
plot of the story. You're pulling back on it.
It's interesting to have a character do that, not the lead character, not the main character.
Not when the plot.
Not in this type of story.
The plot for the first two books is the truth behind the myth, and then
it's built on his word.
And the plot is not even real.
Yeah,
that's like a trick plot.
Yeah, so to me, when someone wants to point that out for this book and say, well, he's a unreliable narrator, so just take that to be true, well, then you might as well say the Mary Sue type thing, which also can't be applicable if you're reading into the details of the book, right? Now, I can't honestly say with 100% certainty he's not an unreliable narrator, but again, what we just talked about is it cheapens the fucking story. Right. Yeah,
and again, like it depends on how these things are being defined. Like I say, some people.
Well, I'm saying define the way that I
have such a loose definition of unreliable narrator that I would be like, well, yeah, based on the way you're defining it, I would agree with it. But if we're talking about is Kvothe just making things up and spinning a yarn, like no, I don't think he's.
We're saying.
Spinning bullshit.
What I'm saying is what you were also saying, which is his truth. If he doesn't know everything in Denna's head, he's not going to speak her truth. He's going to speak his truth through his own eyes of what he's witnessed, right? Yeah. He's going to talk about Denna the way that he knows Denna, and the way that Diak and some of those other guys have explained Denna is this way. So he's pieced together a picture, like a mosaic of who she is. And overhearing her talk to that one girl is huge. Like those little evidential things add up into the picture of what we end up seeing as Denna, which is all from Kvothe observing her, right? We don't have any other information that's coming in. Bast in her ears. So we get crooked nose, ears. Badass ears, crooked nose. So bad
Owen
nose,
Wilson
great
ears.
Who has great ears? Everybody?
I swear, that is going to be one of the things I cannot wait for an adaptation to prove you wrong and to show that when you CGI Owen Wilson's nose on a girl, it still looks good.
It's so absurd. It would be really interesting, though, to see if an adaptation, if they do something with the ears. Like, would you even take it there? It's so distracting to like spend time on. Oh, look at those ears as she walks through. I mean, it only works for literature. Like,
Yeah, they just constantly, every time they show her, she's just constantly brushing her hair back behind her ears.
And there's like a ding. There's like a little
Yeah.
little sound, like and it
Just like shows her
blings.
like glimmering, like some like like some glamour shot photo. Like when every time she does it, it goes into like slow motion, showing her pulling her hair back behind her ear.
What if there's some glamour involved? Although that'd be weird because Bast should notice, but there's something going on. Obviously, I mean, those are Bast type of ears. He's just really into them, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that is that's important that he so strongly strongly states that he's telling the truth behind the myths. He's trying to get the truth out there, trying to correct the record on some things. And I think that's largely what his big concern is. It's like there's people that think he's a Chandrian and think this and that, and there's obviously the stuff about Denna, and he's obviously got an issue with that. So I think he's just trying to correct the record on everything, and just make not even paint himself in a good light. Like he tells some fucked up shit about himself, and like what he does to Pike and all that kind of that kind of shit. But he's trying to just get the truth out there, and it doesn't seem like he's trying to fluff it up.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, that's one of the really great things that Rothfuss did with his character in the first place, as the character makeup is. He's still willing to tell the bad things. Kvothe, right? He's not making himself seem spotless here. He looks ridiculous in certain parts. He's walking around wearing that cloak, but he fails a lot, right? He has a lot of shortcomings that get blown up by his own story. So we see those things as well. It's not like it's all good. And I mean, look at him now. He's coded.
Yeah.
So it's not like it ends well. So all of that is mixed in. It makes a super interesting character and a super interesting story because, again, it's all, why is he waiting to die? Why is he, stuck behind the doors, it seems, at this point. So.
Yeah, but then we get, as when Bast like flips out, one of the parts I like, just the little descriptions that he gives where he's like, quick as blinking, Chronicler snatched up the half-covered sheet of paper and pushed his chair back from the table with his feet, saving the sheet from the sudden spray of ink and beer. He's got couple of cool expressions in here that kind of paint the picture of the room, and what, the scene without belaboring the point. But yeah, and then Bast continuing to flip out after that when he's like, this is my chance to tell the full and honest story of my life. Everything is, shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't give a fiddler's fuck what you tell him, Reshi. He'll write what I say or I'll eat his heart in the market square. Such a colorful threat.
I love fiddler's fuck. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. But you'll tell me the truth and you'll tell me now. Bast, we both know I'm not above the occasional embellishment, but this story is different. This is my chance to get the truth of matters recorded. It's the truth behind the stories. And then he's like, Bast, your hand is bleeding. And he's like, he waited a long moment before asking. He's like, Bast, what's the matter? It's like, that's just it. Bast bursts out, throwing his arms wide, his voice high and hysterical. I think I finally understand what the matter is.
This is great, man. Like, so this part here where he laughs, but it was loud and strained and choked off into something that sounded like a sob. He looks up at the rafters of the tap room, his eyes bright. He blinked as if fighting back tears, like that sort of thing. He's angry, and then here he's like, fuck, like my Reshi is doomed.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the revelation he's coming to. It's phenomenal writing. And that little short description is tremendous.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Good. It's a good visual description of, you can just see the pained revelation on Bast's face, and when he leans his head back, he's fighting back tears. He's kind of hysterically laughing, and you can just see like this is news. Whereas he's like, I cannot fucking believe this.
Yeah, and
it's everything. He's like it's this realization that all my plans, everything, me trying to get him back and me trying to get him down, fix it and get it all back together and make it right. It's like it's all doomed to fail. There's nothing I can do if he talked to the Cthaeh.
Yeah, I mean, just considering the idea that like a loved one did something and there's nothing you can do to help, and like that realization, like that's what he's sitting in. He starts out angry, and then he gets to this point. You're like, oh shit, there's so much more going on here. Like it's very layered. It's tremendous, man. And then I mean, what you would react in anger, because then it's just like frustration, aggravation, and desperation. Like, I can't even help you. What the fuck? Like, why would you do? And then it reels on from there.
Yeah, and so he tells him, that the Cthaeh, it's a monster. And he's like, and I like the fact he's like, about the Baron Thaltha, about the White Sisters in the Laughing Way. How can you not know about the Cthaeh? It's a monster. Good Lord, Bast, is that all? You had me all in a sweat. I faced things far worse than there isn't anything worse than the Cthaeh. Bast shouted, bringing his clenched fist down on the table again. This time there was the sharp sound of tearing wood as one of the thick timbers bowed and cracked. Reshi, shut up and listen. Really listen. You know who the Scythe are? They're a faction among the Fae, powerful and with good intentions. I like I think it's interesting that he says good intentions, because that's typically the thing you would say about someone who's done something messed up, who they had good intentions, but they fucked up.
Mm.
And so it's interesting. Like, rarely do you say good intentions if there's not a but behind that.
Yes, it's always carried with, there's a big problem there. Something bad happened. But, good intentions. Which, fuck, man, how many bad things happen from good intentions, man?
Yeah, and good
typically
intentions is the he's a nice guy of of compliments.
Well,
in a different regard.
Actually,
that's a nice guy, but he's they had good intentions, but
that's actually a great example. That he's a nice guy thing is always like, this is someone I'd never want to hang out with. It's always like, well, I don't want to be a dick, but whether you finish the sentence or not, you can, if you say he's a nice guy, or
they had good intentions, there's a but behind that. That's going to undercut what you just said.
What's interesting about the good intentions thing, though, also is more times than not, there's a lot of corruption involved, but like in our world, but
he goes, you don't understand them if you use the term good intentions, but if any of the Fae can said to work for the good, it's them. Their oldest and most important charge is to keep the Cthaeh from having any contact with anyone. So I think it's important to note that Bast does believe that they work for the good, as much as any of the Fae could, because this is the group that the Chandrian one of the groups that the Chandrian specifically point out is, who protects you from the singers, the Sith or Scythe, and the Amir. So this is that group.
That's Haliax speaking to Cinder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This part here also, I just wanted to point out it's another part of great writing by Rothfuss, where saying a lot with a little, Kvothe's understanding, where he says, I didn't see any guards, said in the tone a man might use to soothe a skittish animal. So, I mean, he's trying to work with Bast here, because Bast is flipping the fuck out. Which, it makes sense, because he tried to be like, oh, you had me worried there. I've faced down, dude, shut the fuck up. That's not what you think it is. And then brings up the Scythe, which, again, elevates the Cthaeh to another level, which we didn't know how elevated they should be, is how he should be, whatever it is, the snake should be.
Yeah, what's her, Felurian's reaction to the Cthaeh when she's in a super panic when Kvothe comes back, and then Bast is having an even bigger flip out.
Well, it's important to get it from more than one perspective, right? Because we haven't really heard about the Cthaeh much. So you get it from Felurian. It could just be, well, that's her thing. Plus, she's. I mean, talk about unreliable. We don't know what to rely on with her, right? Because she's in a different world. She's a completely different type of person. She's not really a person. I mean, there's so many other things. So to have it also come from Bast, who's more in a concrete setting in our own minds of who he is and how he interprets the world and how well he knows Reshi, Kvothe, Kote, whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, she doesn't really spell it out. Like, Bast is taking the time to spell out why she was panicking. and why he's panicking. And he's panicking when he knows this happened a while ago.
Yeah.
So he's still panicked about, even though, passage of time has gone by. So it establishes how dangerous the Cthaeh is, but it also establishes that one of the opponents of the Chandrian is, basically, according to the Fae, would be, as close to on the side of good that any of the Fae could be. And so I think that's an important distinction because of the fact that there are people who believe that the Chandrian are like secretly going to be the good guys. It's going to be in one of those twists that they're going to be the good guys. And I think the fact that, Florian's reaction to the Chandrian, where she won't say their name, she's immediately like, dude, I will kill you if I need to get you to not talk about these guys. And then Bast, him bringing up the Scythe and bringing up the fact that they are on the side of good, and Haliax has already established that they're ones that's a group they fear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clearly, when you say one side is the good side and another side fears the good side, it's usually because they're the bad group.
Yeah. Process of not really elimination, but yeah, makes sense. Just a connection.
And, and then when you give, all the other context to it, it just seems like it's going to be a hard sell to make them be secretly good guys. But yeah, he's like, I didn't see any guards. And he's like, I came for all the salt in me. Guess how you slip past them, Rushy. If anyone managed to come in contact with the Cthaeh, the Scythe kill them. They kill them from half a mile off with their longhorn bows. Then they leave the body to rot. If a crow so much as lands on the body, they kill it too. I think it's interesting too that they use bows because of the story with the Adem and how they started. So did the Adem come from them? And this is the group that, splintered off and went into the Fae maybe. Whereas the Adem went to where they went. Is this a splinter off group? Could just be, they could be completely unrelated, but the fact that they use bows and the Adem started with being just expert expert bowmanship, those two things together, it makes me, at least consider it as a thought. Obviously there's not any evidence where you can really, say, yeah, this, it's good to link those. That's a likely link, but it's worth noting when there's only two prominent groups that are noted as being bowsmen, and they're both prominent in prominent positions. One's defending the Cthaeh and the other's the greatest warriors, in the world. So
yeah, and that's their whole background, right? That's their Bible or whatever comes from.
Yeah. The 99 stories is what comes from that. So that is noteworthy, but yeah. And then so Chronicler steps in. He's like, if what you're saying is true, why would anyone go to the Cthaeh? And he's like, in fairness, my people are not known for making good decisions. And it's, so people go to the Cthaeh, one, because, just people make stupid choices, but also the flower, the Rena flower.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
It's a panacea.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And talk about a huge, and then think about Lanre. I mean, you're at your wit's end. You're at the most desperate moment. What's the only thing I can do, right? So you have that temptation. I mean, it's the ultimate temptation, right? And if you have the panacea growing on the tree, I mean, ultimate temptation to get somebody to start talking to this son of a bitch.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you have some incurable disease or someone you care about has an incurable disease, it'd be tough to resist. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, what, just, he's going to say words to me? Who cares?
Yeah, be like, fuck it, dude, I'll just turn it off. I don't talk to him.
I will plug my ears. Just run up like, la 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 la. It's like, ah, damn it. The one thing I didn't think of. I never considered. And it's like, and I see all possible futures. How did I not see that you could just plug your ears and go la 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 la?
That's the ultimate defense.
Yeah. Like Cthaeh's that's his kryptonite.
You wear, stocking cap, right? And then like the headphones that people wear at the Indy 500, just block all sound as much as you can, and plug up your ears. And as you're walking up. Yeah, man. There you go. There's your defense.
Just bringing a boombox with you, just blaring it, like 2 boomboxes over the shoulders, both blaring music into your ear.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. What are you playing in that moment? What are you playing to the Cthaeh?
What's that song? Dun, 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 dun. I'm trying to think of I can't think of the name of the song, but you got to play some kind of rock song.
You think so? Yeah, something that constantly shreds or whatever. Yeah.
God damn it! What is that? Because we mentioned so many ACD songs.
For those about to rock, we salute you. Was that it?
Yeah, something.
I thought that's what that kind of sounded like. It made me think of. Yeah, all of a sudden, you're just like massive AC/DC fans. But I was like I don't know, before I probably like 14, 15. I love this shit.
You play some Milli Vanilli song, and then the Cthaeh gets you with the like, hey, let's do that running high five. Set the thing down and go run back, and then he can talk to you. She got the boom boxes off your ear. Just couldn't help screws you up.
Yeah, just couldn't help it. He's a master.
Blame it on the rain. Oh. Yeah.
Just hearing that chorus literally like makes me nauseous. I remember riding the bus and that song playing, like, I don't know, right when it was big, they would just play and play and play.
It's the most amazing thing ever is like they did not sing their own songs and they became massively famous. Talk about pressure. The pressure of we have to lip sync everything, like, because none of this is ours. Like, you'd only get away with that before the era now, like with social media and all so much live music and shit like that, where there's no way you could get faking that you're singing songs that you're not singing.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I mean, but you know, that's corporate fucking music central, you know.
Yeah.
Just like, well, we got the look. What's the sound? All right, let's put that together. Boom.
I don't know who produced that, but I guarantee you they suffered no consequences whatsoever. The only people who like
the twins.
It was all on those guys. They took 100% of the blame. Nobody involved in managing it or producing it that roped these guys in. I
can just see like the guys that convinced them, like, no, this will work. Don't worry about it. We got you covered. And the moment it came out, they just turned and went, "How dare you!"
They tricked me too. I did not see it coming.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, they literally look at Milli and Vanilli and say, "I can't believe you would do this."
Yeah. Those bastards. We all were tricked. All of us, including me, were duped.
Well, what about the producer that was involved?
We should all of us should be mad at them and only them.
And the question comes up, like, well, but who produced it? Who was the A&R and everything? Like, they did it all. They're wonderkins, man. They did everything.
Hold on. You signed them without like ever seeing them sing in person? That mixtape, dude. That mixtape was hot. It was hot.
Yeah, I love that idea of just trying to remove yourself from any culpability.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. They fooled us. Now I'm wanting to look into it. How dare you?
But yeah, he talks about the Wren of Flowers, and he's like, I can understand now that might draw a person in, even if they knew better. He's like, I have to admit, I don't see the trouble. The innkeeper looked up and he said, I have to admit, I don't see the trouble. He said apologetically, I've seen monsters pass. The Cthaeh fall short of that. He's like, that was the wrong word for me to use, Reshi, but I can't think of a better one. If there was a word that meant poisonous and hateful and contagious, I'd use that. And he talks about how not only does it see the future, but it sees all possible futures, and it clearly and perfectly. It's not like just, it sees it in a vague way. It knows every word it says to you, how it will change your course of your life. And it sees it perfectly, how it will change it in exact detail, exactly every twist and turn of your life. any word that he says to you, he knows exactly what it will do. Whether it will do nothing or do everything, he can see that. And he can see whether, his inflection and how he says things. And, it's like the same thing when Kvothe was walking up. He knew if he dropped something, one of the butterflies down, that it would catch his attention and he would come over. So he would know that how to get your attention. He would know what he has to say to you to send you down the worst possible path for your life. Obviously, the limitation is whatever the worst possible thing you could do, he can't do worse than that. So if the worst possible thing you could do, the worst outcome for your life, the worst trajectory would barely had any impact on the world, then you're not going to be very useful for him. But for someone like Kvothe, who's got a lot of power and a lot of notoriety, and he's a big figure in the world, that kind of guy would be a dangerous person for the Cthaeh to get access to.
Yeah, and perhaps the most dangerous, depending on what happens, right? I mean, the world's in a real fucked up place at this point. And I guess, clearly he sends him on a path, right? When he talks about Denna.
He sent him down a path to the Adem, for one. He's got him going with the mayor. The mayor will obviously come back. He's going to send him down a path to meet the mayor again. So the Lackless box, it seems like, he's sending him down a path to maybe kill a king, open the doors of stone, like dudes, the Cthaeh seems directly, responsible for some aspects of what goes down.
Yeah, it's interesting because
of what he said.
Well, but the interesting thing is we can't know what would have happened if he didn't meet the Cthaeh, because there's no undoing it, right?
Yeah.
So we can't know what wouldn't have happened, but we do know based off of what was said, what the Cthaeh talked about, right? When he went on about Cinder, and he went on about the mayor, and he went on about Denna and all those details, what that would spin Kvothe into, so it's, dude, again, I mean, it's such an interesting thing to choose to do from Rothfuss's perspective. Like this idea of, like, he can send someone like an arrow into the future, right? Like a pointed objective, right? Just like that all-knowing sort of, just to place that in the world is so interesting because of what elements that does bring, and it basically tells us, so this, in so many ways, this is why Kvothe's doomed. He has his arrogance and he has his folly, right? He has those things that are already his flaws. But with the Cthaeh, I mean, if Bast is right, fate's sealed,
And it's interesting just in the way it's done, because like if the Cthaeh was just walking around in the world, like, I mean, he would have already destroyed it by now.
But yeah. I mean, that's
so
yeah. You have to have like a tied down element to it.
Yeah. So like the way he limits it is interesting. Like it lives in a tree. It seems like it's like a snake or something. It's not even a person like living in a tree. And how would that even work if it was like a person? So it seems like it's a snake that's has to stay in this tree and can't come out. It doesn't lie, whether it can or it can. It seems like both Bast and Flurry say it tells you the truth, but it uses the truth, and it uses its foreknowledge of every possible future. It uses those two things to send you down the worst path it could possibly send you down, and what's going to be the most destructive towards the world. And so it's very malicious, but it's also very limited, because there's an entire group out there that kills anybody that comes near the tree. So the Cthaeh's not getting a lot of these opportunities to talk to people, to send them down, down these bad paths that fuck shit up. But when he does
also
get a chance,
interesting,
it can be very deadly.
Well, and it's not like he's getting repeat visits, right? He's getting this one. If he gets a chance, it's this one chance. Like, you better, make it count, basically, what it comes down to. But like you said, he's malicious and vicious and toys with the butterflies. It's a great visual element to mix in, too, because what he does to the butterflies is what he's doing with people's lives.
Yeah.
Right? He's just like, whatever. I don't like your face. Like, whatever. Like, I don't like your free spirit. I don't like your, I don't like your sunny disposition. How about that, Kvothe?
Yeah, but there's got to be something magical that binds it to the tree, because otherwise, why couldn't it just slither off? Like, I mean, even if you're like, well, there's people guarding it that could shoot it. It's like, well, they could go and burn down the tree right now if that's the case. So, like, if it's just a matter of they can kill it, then why don't they kill it?
I think like you were talking, or when Florian was saying, "Oh, the things they made," right? Well, this is one of the things that got made, right? This was perhaps it was a shaper. Somebody made this super malicious, future-telling element.
Yeah, it could. I guess it could be, because the statement is Ajax talked to the Cthaeh before he stole the moon.
Oh yeah,
but I tend to think like the Cthaeh is just one of the immortals like them, but it's a malevolent creature. But what I think is interesting is because it is in a tree, and it's it can't leave this tree according to Bast, and it has to tell the truth. I think it's noteworthy that Tehlu, in the story of Incanus, he pins it up against the tree, and he doesn't let Incanus lie to him when he's got him pinned up against a tree. And so I think that's that symbolic nature there is noteworthy, because maybe it's that because of what the Cthaeh did with Ajax and with Haliax, maybe someone like Tehlu came, or Aleph came, and they bound him to that tree and put a binding on him where he can't leave the tree somehow, some kind of magical spell that doesn't let him leave the tree, and that he has to tell the truth. He can't lie.
It doesn't sound like he can die either. It sounds like he's immortal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe maybe there's something to that, where it's hinting at the fact that the Cthaeh was locked up in the tree by someone like Tehlu, and he's bound there through magic. And then the Scythe are also, because of their relationship with the world, and that they're trying to it seems like hunt down bad guys, and like the Chandrian, and protect people, stop people from going and talking to the Cthaeh, whatever their ultimate goal is. But I think, it could be the case that Tehlu locked him in the tree, and the Scythe are there to kind of protect it and defend people from going up and seeing it. And they're just trying to limit the amount of damage that the Cthaeh can do because of what it already did with Ajax and Haliax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's really interesting. You want to get it behind a door of stone or something, right? I mean, it sounds like it has its element. It's in the Fae, so it's already not going to be sought out by a lot of people, right? So it's going to have its limitations in terms of the damage that it can do. And like you said, the Scythe is there. Or typically there, at least. So there's very few people that ever have a chance to get to it. So it is very limited, but it's such a malevolent, malicious, whatever you want to say, force that, man, again, it's really interesting to just have that peace in the world. I guess it's, evil still lives in the hearts of men, right? That idea, it's there. It's in the world somewhere. Typically, people don't delve down those avenues, but it's there, right? It's kind of symbolic in that sense too.
And it's,
I like it.
And so like there's, how did it get there? Why is it stuck in the tree? Why don't they kill it? Those are obviously big questions that I'd like answers to. And then also, where were the Scythe? Why didn't they kill Kvothe? Is it something the Cthaeh did, or someone did to help the Cthaeh because they wanted Kvothe to talk to him?
Or is it like an Adem Chandrian type situation where this is part of Kvothe's destiny? Pulling in.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say destiny. I would say more just like people are guiding him. They're using him.
That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. But more, rather than like the chosen one, more of he's being manipulated and controlled behind the scenes. But yeah, where were they? I mean, did someone like did the Scythe intentionally let him go see the Cthaeh? Because they have some kind of purpose behind the scenes that we don't know about. And that's why he says good intentions, because, they they should have stopped him. But he seems to be completely unaware that that's even part of their purpose. So I'm not even sure if he's met them. He probably maybe just heard stories about them. But it's interesting. Where were they? Why weren't they there? It's tough to say. Obviously, that's one of the questions it'd be interesting to get an answer to in the third book. Because if that's your one job, well, you messed up letting Kvothe, of all people, go talk to the Cthaeh.
Yeah, man. Yeah, where's your radar? Whatever the fuck they're using. It took a break. Took a smoke break the wrong time. You know what? Yeah. That makes me think Grey Dalcinti came in, packed smoke, started passing them around. It's like, hey guys, take a little break. They all chilled out. They're just chilling, sitting on Greystones.
Yeah.
Pumping cigs. Busting cigs. And Grey
Dalcinti got him, tricked him. He brought in a rack of dusters and had him trying them on, and they got completely distracted.
Rolled in with a rack.
Yeah.
I'm picturing this, wheeled in rack of hanging dusters.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Passing out cigs.
Of course, he doesn't speak.
It's fucking great, man.
It's all just attitude.
Look at him. It's like, hey, remember? You remember last time I saw you, you were commenting on my duster. Well, look what I brought.
There's one guy in the group's like, aren't we supposed to be doing something? Dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Like, dude, you can take a break for a couple of minutes.
We haven't taken a break in an eternity. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
One break.
What's the worst that could happen?
The end of the fucking world.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, and then he goes, I like the way he kind of, Kvothe explains it to the reader where the problem could be, where he's like, so a young man seeking his fortune goes to the Cthaeh and takes away a flower. The daughter of the king is deathly ill, and he takes the flower to heal her. They fall in love despite the fact that she's betrothed to the neighboring prince. They attempt a daring moonlight escape, but he falls from the rooftops and they're caught. The princess is married against her will and stabs the neighboring prince on their wedding night. The prince dies. Civil war, fields burned, and salted, famine, plague. And he's like, that's the story of the fasting war, Bast said, faintly. Kvothe nodded. It's one of the stories Florian told. I never understood the part about the flower until now. She never mentioned the Cthaeh. And he's like, it's bad luck because you don't want to tell that there's a panacea, to cure all ills and, where you can find it because you're tempting fate.
I also like, I guess it's a bit redundant, but I like the way it's explained when Bast talks about an arrow only hits one person. Cause basically it's like he shoots an arrow. Anyone influenced by the Cthaeh would be like an arrow shot into the future. And then he points out an arrow only hits one person. It's more like a plague ship sailing for a harbor.
Yeah.
Where you picture that and you're like, oh shit. Like it's this massive wave of, just death and destruction and disarray and chaos and all this that can just spin things out of control.
Yeah. It's it's like the butterfly effect type of thing.
Yeah. But it's, we get the picture that it's a butterfly effect, but basically guaranteed to be bad.
Yeah, and it's not unintended consequences. It's the intended consequences, like knowing full well that if he changes has you do this one thing or says this one word, he knows all the ripple effects, and he can pick which one he wants. So
we need this in our world, but for comedic purposes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. How boring would that be where you knew with perfect clarity exactly the right thing to say and the timing, everything to get the most amount of laughs, but it would be so boring because you would already instantaneously know it. And it's like you didn't earn it. So you take that away and it's just like, it's like a computer program at that point.
Yes.
What a boring life.
For the one delivering it. But for us, it's great. And
for the audience, you'd have the greatest stand up ever where everybody laughs so hard they're fucking all dying. They can't breathe.
Yeah, but you
everybody's just like, it's too much. It's too funny.
But you wouldn't have the opportunity to build a set ever because it's all
that's
gold.
what the Cthaeh would do with a stand-up bit. Is the Cthaeh would have a stand-up so funny that it kills everybody in the audience.
Literally. I love the idea of Kenny Banya standing there going, it's gold.
It's gold. It's gold.
Because all it is.
Cthaeh. It's gold, Cthaeh.
It all is. It's all killing. That risk management shit.
Yeah, Kenny Banyan goes and talks to the Cthaeh, and the Cthaeh tells him exactly the best comedy bit ever, so he literally kills when he does his bit.
So my favorite things is like of the whole Kenny Banya arc in Seinfeld is when he gets the risk management stuff by mistake. He's like, oh yeah, I got it. I've been using it. It's gold.
Yeah.
Risk management literature is killing.
Yeah. Love the soup. It's like, that's not a dinner. That's not a lunch or whatever it was. It's like, it was just a soup. Like, no, the soup was the meal.
Yeah, that's great. No one told you to get soup. Whatever the fuck you want. But this is it.
Yeah.
Load up, man.
Should have got them crackers.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and then he's like, Chronicler jumps in with because Chronicler has some more grounded insights, and it gets into it more at the end of the book too. But he's like, seems like this creature has quite a reputation, but I find it hard to believe it's quite as dangerous as all that. It would be very dangerous, but there are limiting factors. Like, if you're talking to someone that has very little influence, very little power, just through having a conversation with that person, you're not going to change their directory so much that they become a plague ship on the world. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, there's only so much damage that every single person could do. And like, not everybody has the potential to be, a Kvothe that causes a civil war and shit.
Yeah. Typically the guys you see going around holding signs and talking about we're all going to hell, they're not very influential.
No.
You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what I'm picturing in this moment. Obviously not the same thing, but those guys are the opposite of convincing. They become social repellent.
But yeah, and then so when he says that though, Kvothe not Kvothe, Bast looked at Chronicler incredulously. Iron and bile, he said, his voice quiet. Do you think I'm a child? You think I don't know the difference between a campfire story and the truth? Chronicler made a mollifying gesture with one hand. That's not what Without taking his eyes from Chronicler, Bast laid his bloody palm flat on the table. The wood groaned and the broken timbers snapped back into place with a sudden crackling sound. Bast lifted his hand, then brought it down sharply on the table. The dark runnels of ink and beer suddenly twisted and shaped themselves into a jet-black crow that burst into flight, circling the taproom once. Bast caught it with both hands and tore the bird carelessly in half, casting the pieces into the air where they exploded into great washes of flame the color of blood. It all happened in the space of a single breath. Everything you know about the Fae could fit inside a thimble, Bast said, looking at the scribe with no expression at all, his voice flat and even. How dare you doubt me? You have no idea who I am. Bast is, he's gangster. He's a gangster freaking dude.
There's a couple important things there that, first of all, that's fucking nuts. I forgot that visual. I kind of remembered a piece, but it's like, whoa, what the shit?
It's a beer and ink crow, and then rips it in half and turns it into flame the color of blood.
So that also brings up a couple things, which not completely, but there's a number of times where I've thought, so you can't do magic per se in the inn, right? I've thought that a number of times. I'm like, what is it? Maybe it's something there. I know it's things within Kvothe. It's like his name and stuff like that. I know a lot of that is what's really at fault. But I've toyed with the idea that maybe there's something about the inn itself. The fact that Bast can do this, now he is also completely different. He's of the Fae. He's got different capabilities and all that. But it just kind of, it hurts that idea to a degree that I had in my mind that, maybe there's some type of I don't know what to call it.
It would have to be a very
cloaking
specific
sort of
limiting factor, because Bast is got the glamour for his legs.
Yeah,
He's got he does the magic when Kvothe gets his teeth busted up. He makes that little dip and then takes the like milk and swishes it in his mouth and spits out. No, he transfers the wound from Kvothe's mouth to his own mouth. Does that little magic. When Kvothe hurts his tooth, like Kvothe's like, I'm going to lose my tooth. And Bast's like, you will not. So he gives him like some paste to drink and then, swishes it back. And then when he spits out, like it's all frothy blood looking.
Took his herpes? Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a good friend.
And yeah, very good friend. But yeah, so he does multiple forms of magic. Chronicler calls the name of iron. Kvothe makes the bottle break. So
all right, I get it. I was wrong. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's numerous examples of magic, but I think what it could be, we've talked about, is I think if he changed his name, or Ari changed it for him, and she shaped him into a different person, it could be that because he's was completely shaped into someone else, he doesn't have the sympathy training anymore. Like the muscle memory's gone. Like all the training that it took to become a great sympathist would, it could be gone if you're a new person that's not lived those things. Like it takes training to get good at those things.
He loses
so if you would change, would you lose those? Yeah. Yeah. Whereas like you have the memory, like exactly what you're kind of supposed to do, but it's not the same as actually practicing those things for long periods of time. So if you change someone fundamentally where they didn't experience those things and they just have memories of it, that would not be the same thing. The practice is necessary. Otherwise, you could just tell someone how to do these things and they could just do it. They wouldn't need to practice. It'd just be like Allen Iverson, where practice was, unnecessary.
Well, and unnecessary to talk about as well. There's no reason to.
But yeah, and so, and he's like, I swear by my tongue and teeth, I swear it on the doors of stone, I am telling you 3,000 times. There's nothing in my world or yours more dangerous than the Cthaeh. There's no need for that, Bast, Kvothe said softly. I believe you. Bast turned to look at Kvothe and sagged miserably in his chair. Wish you didn't, Reshi. And he's like, so after a person meets the Cthaeh, all their choices will be the wrong ones. He's like, not wrong. Catastrophic. Jack spoke to the Cthaeh before he stole the moon, and that sparked the entire creation war. Lanre spoke to the Cthaeh before he orchestrated the betrayal of Mir Terrenial, the creation of the nameless, the Skandine, that they can all be traced back to the Cthaeh. What are the nameless? What are the Skandine? We don't know. But Lanre spoke to the Cthaeh before he orchestrated the betrayal of Mir Terrenial. The fact that Bast looks at the Cthaeh as the worst creature ever in the history of the world, worse than Lanre, worse than Haliax, worse than Iax, and he's like he points out the fact that Lanre betraying Mir Terrenial as one of the worst things that the Cthaeh has done, and so that it's tough to spin that as when Denna's story is that Lanre was basically righting a wrong, that they screwed him over, and so it's not so much his betrayal, but they betrayed him, and he was putting, getting his just vengeance is basically her type of story. And so but Bast is painting this as one of the worst things that has happened. One of the worst things that Cthaeh is responsible is for that event. So it's tough to paint that as Lanre was not the bad guy in that situation. After when you have Bast pointing that out, given how he views the Cthaeh.
Yeah, Lanre's always been an interesting figure, right? Because he goes out of desperation. He's basically a broken individual. He can't sleep. He can't that. The whole thing that ends up happening with him is like he makes bad choices, obviously, and he has to be cast as a villain at this point because of what he's capable of and what he did, what he's culpable for, I guess is the better way to say it. I don't think there can be doubt there. I like actually, there's a little bit of room which makes him very interesting in terms of is he the worst or is the Cthaeh? I like the idea of the nameless, if knowing the names of things is the ultimate control and would also be a defense over something. We've talked about copper. If you don't know the name of it, then you can't control it. The idea of individuals or some type of group that can't be named, there's no one there. You would think to a degree there's no one that could defend against them, at least to some degree.
Yeah, because they're called the nameless, you do think that it's likely something that was created by the shapers to attack the namers. That something that they would not be able to name to control. Because one of the problems with fighting a namer is if they knew that, if it was someone like a Taberlin or a Scarpy or a Lyra who were the most gifted with names, it'd be tough to send anything against them because they could just call that thing's name and control it.
Yeah.
And stop it.
That's kind of
like having a group that is impossible to name, which is also why I think maybe copper is like a creation from the shapers. Like they created copper to make weapons, that the namers couldn't, manipulate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because how do you fight a guy that, with, an iron sword if the guy knows the name of iron? Like, I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything because he's going to take control of the iron and kill you with it.
Yeah. Copper sword. That's why Taberlin had it. He's swinging a big penny around.
And it seems to, like the Fulurian mentions that copper, they fear copper. Is that because of naming things, or is there something fundamental that makes the Fae vulnerable to copper in some other way, where it could be that Taberlin has a copper sword because of, to be able to attack creatures from the Fae? Or it could be that, Taberlin is a shaper. And so, maybe Taberlin is someone like Ajax or something like that. Maybe these are stories of Ajax. But the fact that there's stories against Taberlin versus the Chandrian makes me think that's highly unlikely. But the fact that he has a copper sword throws into question, like, why? Who's he using it against?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the nameless.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe. But why would you need a copper sword against the nameless? They're not namers. You would want it against namers. Nameless doesn't imply that they have the power of naming. It implies that namers can't call their name to control them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
But regardless, yeah, I don't know. Like there's numerous ways you could go with the copper sword, but it is extremely noteworthy that he carries one, because why? Who's he using it against? Because obviously if it's something you can use against namers, it's interesting that he would have a sword to use against namers, given that, in the large scope of the history of the world, the namers are largely viewed as the good guys in the creation war. But yeah, and then so Bast looked at him, or it goes to him. He's like, it does more than that. In our plays, if the Cthaeh tree is shown in the distance, in the backdrop, the story is going to be the worst kind of tragedy. It puts it's put there so the audience knows what to expect, so they know everything will go terribly wrong in the end. And Kvothe looked at Bast for a long moment. "Oh, Bast," he said softly to his student. His smile was gentle and sad. "I know what sort of story I'm telling. This is no comedy." And then, Bast looked up at him with hollow, hopeless eyes. "But Reshi," his mouth moved, trying to find words and failing. The red-haired innkeeper gestured at the empty tap room. "This is the end of the story, Bast. We all know that." Kvothe's voice was matter-of-fact, as casual as if he were describing yesterday's weather. "I've led an interesting life, and this reminiscence has a certain sweetness to it. But this is no dashing romance. This is no fable where folk come back from the dead. It's not a rousing epic meant to stir the blood. No, we all know what kind of story this is." The fact that he mentions this is no fable where folk come back from the dead, again, I feel like Simon is gonna bite the dust. I think someone close to him is gonna die, and I think more so than Ari, Simon is the one that seems like the innocent guy that, if you took him out, that would be the one that would hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. And that leaves fella alone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think It does seem, just the way stories work, it does seem, Ari does seem like one that would also hurt, but she seems, I don't know. It does seem like Simon would be it's kind of low-hanging fruit to a degree, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then, you have the fact where he's like, his face was calm without a trace of anger or bitterness. Like he's accepting what is happening to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And
he's accepting it. It's not, he's not anger or bitter anymore. It's just, it is like you always say, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
What clearly has been reiterated, he is waiting to die. He's not real happy about it. And
and so, and the chronicler says, it's not over if you're still here. It's not a tragedy if you're still alive. Bast nodded eagerly at this, looking back at Kvothe. Kvothe looked both of them for a moment, then smiled and chuckled low in his chest. Oh, he said fondly, you're both so young. So Bast is 150 years old.
Yeah. Chronicler's an old guy, too.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of brings
up... Kvothe, as far as, looks, it seems like he would be the youngest of the trio.
It doesn't even seem close. But also, it does seem that his life experience gives him that age. But and then it also brings up the question, does he end up going to the Fae for a extended period? That brings on a bunch of age. I mean, it brings up that question, I would say.
It seems like he would have more knowledge of the Fae than he does. Like, Bast talks about him like he knows things he shouldn't know, but he doesn't talk about him like, you lived in the, if it was like you lived in the Fae for 100 years, like, how do you not know about the Cthaeh would be my question. Like, if you were there for an extended period of time, you were there for an extended period of time. How the fuck could you not know about the Cthaeh? It wouldn't be like, but you know about this and this and this, these pieces of fact, it would be, you lived here for a super long time.
Well, the Cthaeh is pretty well hidden, bro.
Yeah.
Although, if there's anybody that would go to the Cthaeh more than once, it would be Kvothe.
Yeah. Well, and someone would have mentioned it if you were there for that long. Around, if you're just around Florian, that's one thing. But if you're around a lot of people and it's in plays and that's part of the thing, is like anytime you see a picture of the Cthaeh, it means it's a tragedy. Obviously, everybody in the Cthaeh, everybody in the Fae would know about the Cthaeh. So, if you're there long enough, you should know about it too. Yeah, but that's all I got on that one.
Yeah, me as well.
All right, so chapter 106, titled Returning. In this chapter, Kvothe is with Florian in the Fae, trying to recover from his meeting with the Cthaeh, and Florian struggles on how to deal with it. But once he does recover, his time at the Fae ends, and he heads back to the mortal world.
Yeah, pretty short, right? I mean, it does give, it does quite a few things, right? We have the crazy-ass dreams Kvothe's having, but then also, a little bit of, sort of Fae world building. Nothing real specific, but kind of crazy fruit and, little animals, and basically Florian showing that she doesn't know how to be a human being.
Well, and it also shows that there's some kind of magical effect from the Cthaeh. It's not simply just the words, because there's nothing in the specific words that he said to Kvothe. There's nothing that would break him up that much where it takes him days to even function.
He does.
He's just sleeping for days without moving, and it's not like he was just I was depressed. There was something fucked up with him, that completely broke on the inside just from the Cthaeh saying some words to him. And then his mouth was getting real dry when the Cthaeh, it does something to you.
Well, he did,
which is also I think why she checked for bites.
He did also revisit his his parents dying and that whole imagery and that scene, which is upsetting. But yeah, you're right. There's an actual physiological effect that he seems to be dealing with, which it's almost like he had a crazy drug induced. It's almost like he's having a reaction to something that was injected within him.
Yeah, because when he had the plumb bob, that broke him up, and he had a few bad nights, but it wasn't this extended period of time. And he was like, when the plumb bob happened, it's a similar effect. It seems like a similar effect to what the Cthaeh did to him. That the plumb bob maybe has, some kind of similar, that they both had some kind of similar effect where the emotions were way more intense than normal. Where but the Cthaeh, it was much worse. This description's much, much worse. Like, he was completely out of commission for a while, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like he can't even interact with Felurian.
Yeah.
Right? He's literally just distraught and laying in bed. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm curious what exactly the Cthaeh's words do to you. Like, what kind of actual impact it has.